So we'll move from the shark alligator rule in the legislative session. Although the legislative session and alligators don't really cross paths that often. No, hang on. A couple of years ago, State Representative Stephanie Hilferty had a bill to make it illegal to feed alligators your leftovers from Deanie's. Probably other restaurants too, but she's based out of Bucktown, so we'll just throw Deanie's in there. Joining us now is Jason DeCuir from Advantage Consulting. I have no segue here, Jason, so welcome.
No, thank you, Brian. It seems like every time around this time of the year, we're talking about somebody getting bit by a shark or alligator, primarily when they're playing golf. You know,
so the alligators come out of the water hazards as well. Yes, yeah. I went with the reference of you always hear about like the 70-year-old woman walking her dog.
Yeah,
you know, she got the little toy dog and she's walking too close to the lake.
Yeah, I tuned in a little later. I called in a little later this morning. Where was the canoe thing?
South of Orlando, Kissimmee.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. They're
played a lot of golf around there. A lot of alligators around there.
Oh yeah, for sure. 11-foot alligator. They didn't see him in 2 foot of water.
Wow.
I know.
Yeah, they've gotten people at those resorts and other things while they're down there visiting Disney. So you got to be careful.
Yeah, also true. Exactly. So speaking of being eaten alive, let's talk insurance bills.
Good segue.
I hate myself for that, but let's roll.
Yeah, so look, just a quick update. We've talked a lot about the constitutional amendments, and just a quick update there. What I will tell you, obviously, tax is still taking somewhat of a backseat to the fights on carbon capture and insurance reform and that sort of stuff. Also, a lot of the DOTD, Department of Transportation and Development reform bills got moving and heard this week. But on the tax front, just to remind everyone, the 5 pieces to what was formerly known as CA2 are moving through the process. So that's kind of riding along in the background there. The bill that is furthest along is that did cross into the Senate is the constitutional amendment by decibels to give parishes the option to exempt inventory. The other budget pieces, the severance piece, the teacher element of this, that's all still in the House, but it is moving along. I thought I'd point out just maybe a couple of other interesting bills, Brian. I know we talk a lot about business and the bills that impact them, but I also thought today maybe we talk about some bills that just impact the everyday person that maybe people aren't aware that are out there, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
So there is a bill by Representative Willard, and this kind of fits into the whole property tax inventory theme, but a little different, obviously, where he is looking to increase the homestead exemption, and he would increase it, and it was heard in committee, and I think where it kind of landed with amendments and everything else is that they would put it in the hands of the parish to make the decision as to whether or not that specific parish wants to increase the homestead. I'm sure most of your viewers know that's the part of your house that you do not have to pay, or the value of the house that you do not have to pay property tax on. But now we're starting to see, again, some elements of giving local governments more power to make that decision and not necessarily controlled by the Constitution. So I thought that's an interesting bill.
It absolutely is. In the same way, if parishes control inventory tax, they kind of can determine their own destiny with how much they want to recruit business. This would fall under that, because the more local you get, the more likely it is you're running your municipality off of property tax, right? I mean,
that's correct. And look, they now have that authority to weigh in on ITAP, and there's some thoughts as to whether or not it would create competition parish to parish. But I mean, look, you already know some of the outmigration from East Baton Rouge to Ascension, which are very close. Does that mean that, people start farm shopping a little bit based on, if one parish says, hey, we're going to increase it, and another parish says we're not? I mean, it could be interesting even when it comes down to where people may live.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to, a bill like this would have a very significant effect on how local governments handle their own business. Now, the interesting part of this, though, is, if I'm not mistaken, this is a constitutional amendment. It would take It would take all the
Basically,
people's vote to give individuals the vote.
that's correct. And the rule of thumb here, which goes into the longer conversation we've had and wanting to have, Louisiana possibly look a little bit more like the Texas tax structure. That if it's a property tax bill, 9 times out of 10, it's probably going to require a constitutional amendment.
Yeah.
Couple of other bills that you may have talked about with other legislators, but you may be aware that Representative McMakin and both Representative Young have bills that would exempt income tax on NIL deals, right? And those are pending. The other one kind of, in terms of kind of the food, beverage industry, restaurant industry, no, there would be no income tax on tips and overtime. So I don't know what you think about that, Brian. But,
no tax on tips and overtime. I don't know how when you have an hourly employee, how easy is it or how hard is it? Like, how difficult would it make it to determine what was what on your paycheck? The tips part, I think, would be easier to as you siphon through it all, to figure out what goes in what column. The overtime, I think, would be a little bit harder, although I have having a problem with anything that gives you incentive to work more. Like, I'm all about incentivizing more work. It's working hard and whatnot. That said, to me, if you work hard, you should be rewarded for said work. If you put in that extra time, if you go that extra mile, you shouldn't be punished for it.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And, this is also one is, you may be, like myself, one that eats at restaurants quite a bit, but, there's sort of this weird dynamic right now with restaurants and, how much they should compensate the staff versus how much the patrons should. As we know, tips are increasing and the cost of running restaurants is more. And so does this one make the extra earnings, the tips that those servers make go, does it stretch that dollar a little bit further, right? Does it help with that balance? So I think it's an interesting bill. A lot of this is going to be driven by, what's the cost, and we just lowered rates for everyone, and so you still have to pay for some of these items.
But what would be the onus on the business to separate that? Because I mean, most folks would have their taxes pulled out of their paychecks on the front end. I'm not putting the onus on the restaurant worker to make sure everything's hammered out the right way.
No, but that's typically how it is now, particularly as it relates to the cash portion of the tips. It's always going to fall back on, did you earn it? Was it reportable? And did you have the obligation? Yeah, on the credit card tips, it's much easier for the restaurants to manage. I agree with you.
Yeah.
A couple other interesting bills out here. I know there's a lot of conversations about hemp and vaping. Representative Brass is looking to increase the excise tax, from 15 cents to 33% of invoice price on vape products. And so, when you talk about excise tax, those are different than sales and income tax. You normally see excise tax in relation to what we call sin products. There's an excise tax on cigarettes, there's an excise tax on beer, wine, and alcohol, and this kind of continues that theme on increasing the tax on vape, try to disincentivize the usage. I don't know that it will, but nevertheless, to the extent that people do it, the state would generate more revenue.
Well, I'm always torn on these. Well, I'm not torn at all on them. I'm not a fan of these. And we're talking with Jason DeCuir from Advances Consulting about a number of the bills making their way through the legislative process right now. It's because you can't come out in 2024 and say we're going to be, we're looking to lower your income tax overall, and we're looking to tighten up the belt and everything. Come out in 2025 and say we're going to double all of our sin taxes. I mean, the vaping's one thing. Jason, the one I've been dialed in on is the mobile sports betting.
Well, I was going there next. I was saying, Brian, here's one that might hit home a little closer, and I was going to see where you were on this. So Representative Jordan has one to increase it from 15 to 17%, and then Representative Reiser wants to go from 15 to 32.5%. So there you
we've had the Sports Betting Alliance on a couple times now talking about this. Is basically what you're going to do is you are going to make mobile sports betting a non-factor in the state of Louisiana. You're going to make mobile sports betting a lot less convenient, a lot less affordable. Or you're going to take away all the different incentives that the different apps offer, like promotions and whatnot. And then you're going to, if you're going to bleed something, you can't bleed it dry, right?
No, that's right. And look, I'm a big sports fan, but I don't do any kind of betting, and I'm sure your folks probably discuss this. I'm just curious, with the mobile and as transient it is, how do you know, how do you capture, how do you prevent somebody from maybe setting up an account in a neighboring state and you start losing money altogether, right? So how do you?
Well, because they have that walled off. They have the firewalls that prevent that. Because there's still, I want to say there's 4 parishes in Louisiana where you're not allowed to have mobile sports betting.
Okay.
I tell you a great example here, and I actually did this at Washington Mardi Gras this year. You're allowed to. Mobile sports betting is legal in Maryland, but not Virginia, or is it the other way around? I forget. But your app knows where your phone is. So once you cross state lines, once you cross parish lines, if you go someplace where the mobile sports betting isn't allowed, it shuts it down automatically.
Gotcha.
So I don't think you could set up an account, like to say you're from Texas, and not that Texas has it yet, but to say you're from one place when you're really from another, your phone would have that built into it based off of your location. Yeah.
Okay, so based off. Well, I know sometimes when I travel to Texas, other places, it takes a while before my phone realizes I'm back in Louisiana. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But anyway, those are a couple of unique deals. I know we're typically talking about the corporate income and franchise and inventory and that sort of thing, but wanted to make sure that we talked about some bills that would be more applicable to kind of the everyday person. So there you go.
What was your take on Dixon's NIL bill?
I get what he's trying to do. I really do. But Brian, it is what it is. It's here. I'm not sure that I'm a fan of NIL in general. We already have the professional game, the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
My sense is that college is now becoming a professional sport. In fact, what program was it in the SEC that actually declared, I think, their entire athletic department a for-profit entity? I don't know if you saw that headline.
I did not.
I'll have to shoot that to you,
please.
So that's where we're going. They're setting it up as a corporation, and I know there's some litigation around it, and obviously the NCAA is involved, but the college game is already looking different. There used to be, it used to be a little bit more pure, I guess you would call it, because the athletes weren't getting paid. But it's where we are now. So every state is going to have to do what it can to continue to compete, at least if you're in the SEC.
Well, and as we pivot towards revenue sharing, NIL dollars are going to look a little bit different in the next couple of years. So I don't know if now's the right time to be putting something in ink.
Yeah, no, that's right.
All right, we'll pick back up on the tax bills next week. He is Jason DeCuir with Advantage Consulting. We always appreciate the time.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. Appreciate it.
Thank you.